Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I am a ballet teacher with over 25 years of experience in the classroom, an MFA with an emphasis in ballet teaching methods, and I love to spend my time helping people have more fun in class while they continue to improve their technique at a really fantastic rate. Today, let's talk about questions. I love questions when I'm teaching, most of them. In my experience, there are three kinds of questions. There's like genuine information seeking, which I'm always happy to answer. There's manipulative questions. And then there's my favorite kinds of questions, which are like investigative questions, questions that help someone think about technique in a deeper way, or questions that come up as part of the process. So the first kind of questions are just honest investigative questions. You know the saying, there's no such thing as a dumb question? Yeah, it's true, but some of them kind of border on that. Whenever it feels like a question is kind of dumb, it's always a good idea to exhale, take a little mental step back, and just remember that the reason you probably love dance is because it makes sense to you the way that math or auto mechanics or cooking makes sense to someone else. A question might seem dumb to you, but be genuine coming from the person doing the asking. The very best example I ever had and will ever have as a question that was genuine but could have been perceived as dumb came in like my first or second year of teaching. This genuine, not dumb question really is aided by a visual here. So I'm teaching, right? And I'm like, okay, you're gonna bring your right leg up to retire and you're gonna balance. I'm literally standing like this. And she raises her hand and I'm like, what's up? And she goes, so your right toe is up at your knee. And I was like, uh-huh. And she goes, is your left foot on the ground? So you can see why that felt like bordering on a ridiculous question, but it was a genuine question from her. I find that a lot of the genuine questions where you're like, seriously, those tend to come from really perfectionist students. They want really badly to get every single detail right, and they don't trust themselves yet. The second category of questions are questions that are designed to manipulate. It's really easy to assign a question to this category when it might be a genuine question. Sometimes these questions are because the kids are tired and they are trying to slow down the pace of class. Sometimes they really are trying to see, are you gonna set a boundary with them? I don't answer all those questions. When I'm getting a vibe of, okay, these questions are taking us away from the point of class, which is to dance. Unless the question is, did you know the building's on fire? I have no problem saying, we're done with questions for now. Sometimes questions that can be interpreted as having a manipulative intent are actually the student's attempt to engage with the material. They just don't know how yet. They don't know how to show you that they are interested. They don't know how to show you that they are working hard. And students know that you see their work. Sometimes the questions kind of taper off. But remember how I said sometimes questions really are manipulative? Yeah, I have a story about that too. Once upon a time, I was teaching a group. I was choreographing for their spring show, and we had a canon in their dance. And canon is just a fancy word for ripple. And the only reason I bothered to use it, there are people out there where if you call it a ripple, they'll get all snooty about it, like, you don't have real composition training. It's a canon. So anyway, so I had canon / ripple in their choreography. And this student was the only boy in his group, which in this culture, like the culture of the studio I was in, meant that everything was handed to him. Everything was given to him on a platter. He was like, this is hard. The choreography would get changed so that it didn't have to be hard for him. Drove me bonkers. And we were not a great fit student teacher wise, because I held him to the same standard of behavior and expectation as the girls in the room. And he did not like that. And I did not plan on changing. So we get to this canon / ripple, and he raises his hand and he's like, what count do I go on? And this was after, like, I mean, I had taught it, we had reviewed it. Like, this has been a thing that we've been working, this section we'd worked on. This is probably the third class that this section of choreography had been in existence. So he knew. And I was like, well, I think that's a question that you can probably answer for yourself. And he goes, no, just tell me. And I said, well, what count does the dancer in front of you go on? And he's like, 11. And I said, well, what count does the dancer behind you go on? And he goes, 13. And I said, okay, well then I think you can figure out what count you go on. He dug in so deep. He was like, no, just tell me. And I was like, no. To be clear, he was a teenager and I was an adult. So technically, by some people's interpretation, I should have been the bigger person and stepped back from what was clearly a power struggle and just told him that his count was 12. I'm not that mature, so I didn't. I never clarified the count for him, and he never ever tried to get it right. He stood there like the little canon / ripple went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. He stood there 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then he started dancing again. He just he didn't try. He didn't go on 11 and a half. He didn't go on 13. He didn't go on 6. And then when the canon section was over, he started dancing again. Did that for weeks. And I just stood there and looked at him. Neither one of us made a good choice on that one. Okay, but let's talk about my favorite kind of question. And these are questions that increase understanding. For example, a few weeks ago, I had a student ask me about open fourth. I use open fourth in level 2. I only use it in level 2, but I love to use it because it really strengthens rotation equally and helps kids develop that sense of squareness. And that's really what we're working on. We're working on staying square through the torso as we add head coordination. That's one of the principal goals of that level. And open fourth is a very useful tool. I had a student a couple weeks ago ask about it. And so I started my spiel again about how it helps you to stay straight, and we're using it as a teaching tool, but on stage, we won't use it. And she's like, yeah, I understand that. What I mean is, like, where did it come from? I didn't know. So then I got to go on a little research journey, which is like my favorite thing to do. It took a couple weeks, but I came back to her with this answer of like, this is kind of the origin and a rough idea of the evolution and the usage of open fourth versus cross fourth. It really, it deepened my knowledge base, which is super fun, but it also helped kids draw a connection between what they're doing with me right now and what they're going to be doing in, say, 6 months. That's an example of a question that deepens people's knowledge, and I loved it. So those are the 3 kinds of questions that I come across in class. Most of them are either honest questions, information gathering questions, which are great, or like evolutionary questions, which are amazing. So that's how I approach questions in my classes. I try very hard to naturally assume that the question is either honest information gathering or a really great opportunity to understand something in a deeper way. Sometimes it's that second kind of question, but if you are interested in my teaching philosophies, you can learn more about me on my website, geekyballerina.com. I have a newsletter there where once a month I write about a technique tip, an element of artistry, and I also share resources that I have found very helpful. And as always, I hope you have a really great class.